Hello everybody. In this episode I'm going to be covering animation, the kind of basic animation that you can do inside of Premiere Pro. First of all, when we select a clip, you'll notice the items up here in the Effect Controls panel. We've gone through this in a previous episode where we've talked about position, scale, rotation, kind of the native effects that are applied to each clip that you work with within Premiere. And you can also add effects by going down here and let's grab and type in blur. I'm going to grab a Gaussian blur and drop this onto that clip there. So now we have this effect as well. What you've got over here on the side, with any effect that you add within Premiere here, if you add one or if you have these native effects right there, I'm going to move over to this side right here and make a little bit more room on the window here. This is your animation area right over here. That basically means that you can change attributes over time. So what we've got up here are these little stopwatch icons right on the side of each one of these under each effect here. If you arrow down opacity, you see that. For some reason, opacity is already turned on. I usually turn that off unless I'm going to be doing some sort of animation with it, but that's the default. For some reason, Premiere has that turned on already. But if you push one of these here, that toggles your animation on and off. If I click it again, it gets rid of it. It'll say it'll delete the keyframe that it just created. I'll talk about keyframes here in a second. But as you turn that on, it adds a keyframe for you, the beginning keyframe that you want to start with. And if you click it again, it turns it off and it deletes all your keyframes. Now this area up here represents the entirety of the clip, unless you have this little thing zoomed in or out like that. If you have it zoomed in like that, that doesn't represent the entire clip until you grab this and drag it all the way across. And right there is the in point of the clip and the out point of this clip that we have selected. So now that I'm in this window, in the effects controls window, if I hit my home key, it will jump to the beginning of my clip, not to the beginning of the timeline. So we're not in the timeline right now. We are operating. You see how this is blue right here, outline, this outline right there. That means we're operating out of the effects control panel. If I hit Shift 3 and go to my timeline, now notice this is highlighted and I hit home, it'll go to the beginning of the timeline. But if I select the effects control window and I've got that clip selected and hit home, it goes to the beginning, and if I hit end, it goes to the end of the clip. And you can see the playhead here, it's right there at the end, and if I hit home, it's right there at the beginning. Now one thing that happens when you hit end, it not only goes to the end of the clip, but it goes to the first frame of the next clip. This is kind of something you got to be aware of. It actually goes to the first frame of the next clip. So if you're doing animation, you want it to be entirely accurate, you got to arrow back one frame. I'm going to hit my arrow backwards to the left here, and it will go back one frame, and this is actually the ending frame of the clip that we're operating on, and that's kind of important with adding keyframes. So keep in mind, if you hit end, it'll go to the end, but you usually just want to get in the habit of arrowing back one time so it goes back one frame. All right, we're going to do a basic animation right here. We're going to hit our scale, and it will add a keyframe right here at the end. And actually, I'm going to hit home and go to the beginning now. I've got one keyframe at the end, and if I go over here, now that this is turned on, I don't want to hit this again or it will turn it off. So right here, you've got your add and remove keyframe. And I'm going to add one right there. And what keyframes do is tell this clip what it needs to be doing at this point in time on its duration. Now, if I move in the middle here, let me show you something. I'm going to add one more keyframe here in the middle. So I've got three keyframes. One here at the beginning, one in the middle, one at the end. These arrows left and right, here and here, will help you to jump on top of keyframes here. If I arrow to the left, notice it lands on a keyframe. And if I arrow to the right, it lands on a keyframe to the right. If I do it again, it'll just keep on going. It'll keep landing on keyframes. If you have a whole bunch of keyframes kind of close to each other, this is really important to be able to manipulate the proper keyframe, is by arrowing. You don't want to eyeball it and just try to kind of guess and say, oh, that's good, right? That's not exactly on the keyframe right there. If I hit arrow left, it jumps and lands on that keyframe. So the longer the clip is, the tougher it is to tell if you're on a keyframe or not. So that's what those arrows are for, is to land on a keyframe. This is just called go to previous or go to next keyframe. All right, so I'm going to land on my beginning keyframe here. I'm going to arrow over to the left and land on my beginning keyframe. Right here, it says it is at 100 scale, at the default scale. So what I'm going to do, let's make this a little bit. I'm going to grab the scale and I'm going to scale this down, and we're going to take it. Actually, I'll just click on it and type in 50. Take it to 50% scale. Now, as I arrow to the next keyframe, notice this one stayed at 100 where I created it. Now, I go to the next one. Let's type in 20 on this one. 20%. So what this is going to do, this one is at 50%, this one's at 100%, and this is at 20. It will interpolate between these frames, and it will grow from 50% to 100% between these two. So let's arrow back. I'm going to hit play. There we go. Zoomed in and zoomed out. And that is a basic animation right there. So we basically animated this from 50% to 100% and down to 20% here. And now, one thing that you can do with keyframes is if you want the kind of time if you want to change the time, say we want this to zoom up to this and stay on that for like a half a second, what we could do. So I'm going to grab this keyframe. You can actually grab them and move them. So now this zoom will happen quicker over here. Watch this. That's faster now than it was before because these keyframes are closer together. But now I'm going to grab this keyframe here and I'm going to copy it. Control-C on a PC, Command-C on a Mac will copy. Now I move my playhead to where I want my next keyframe to be. I'm going to go hit Control-V or Command-V to paste it, and it has pasted that exact keyframe with the exact attributes. So from here to here, it will stay at 100% because this one, look at that, is defined at 100, and that one is defined as 100. So now it will zoom up to that. It will stay zoomed up to this point, and then it will start interpolating down to this 20%. There we go. Now another feature of this animation is you'll notice as it plays, it goes to 100%, and right here, it just suddenly comes to a stop. If you want to make this look a little bit more natural, what we could do, I'm going to grab this keyframe, just drag it in a little bit so it doesn't start zooming for a minute, right there for a little half second right there. But if you want to make it look a little bit more natural, you can right-click on these and change their attributes. I'm going to right-click on this keyframe. I'm going to tell this to ease out of this keyframe here. There's some other features that we'll get into in a little bit. Right here, though, is you've got this ease out. Once it hits that, and it changes that shape of this keyframe to show that it's not a linear sort of movement from here to here. It's like basically like going from 0 to 60 in one frame, or 0 to whatever speed you were talking about here. With this ease out, it hits this keyframe and eases out of this keyframe into the movement. So it's going to be more gradual. Watch this as it starts to zoom. It gradually kind of moves into it. I'm going to right click on this and tell it to ease into this. So it's easing out of this and easing into this, which means it kind of slowly comes to a stop. See, that's more gradual than all of a sudden just coming to a complete stop. I'm going to right click on this one and say ease out of it. And we're going to right click on this one and scoot it over a little bit and make it shorter. And we're going to ease into it. So ease out of it and ease into this. So now you'll see it go gradual and then kind of come to a soft stop as opposed to a hard sudden stop. But you can combine these as well. I'm going to arrow back to the first keyframe right here, and I'm going to combine a position keyframe. I'm going to hit my position. I'm going to turn on my position right there, and now I'm going to go down to my scale. I want this to kind of keep in sync, so I'm going to go down to my scale. I'm going to arrow over to land on this next keyframe, but then add a keyframe on my position. I'm going to do the same thing, arrow over, add a keyframe, arrow over, add a keyframe. And then I'm going to change my position here as it moves from scale to scale here. From the very beginning here, I'm going to change my position, and I can actually hit my wireframe here. I can change the position here, or I can hit my wireframe and just grab it and drag it like that. Say we want to start it here, and look at this, what it does. I'm going to zoom up on this a little bit and look. What this is this is a path now. Every little dot represents a frame as it moves along its path. It's going to gradually move on this dot path here. Let's zoom back out. And it's going to go from here down to here. So let's play this because this keyframe is still centered. This first one here, I moved up to the upper left-hand corner. So now watch as it scales up, it moves over to the side as well. I can right-click on this one and to go to temporal interpolation and tell it to ease out of it. It's a little bit different. It's temporal because this is actual movement as opposed to just zooming in and out. I'm going to say ease out of that. Same here. Ease in. Go to this one. Ease out. And ease into this one. And ease into this one. Now with that movement there, I'm not really going to need it on my scale now as I play because of scale. So now I'm going to go to the beginning, I'm going to press play, and now it moves from up this corner and zooms up to this point. So it's changing position. So as we hit this one, we can tell it to go to a different position on screen. I'm going to make this move down here. And it shows the entire path from beginning to end of this entire clip. It goes from here to here, and then stops, and then it goes from there all the way down to there. So we play through it, zooms in, and zooms down to there. Now, since we've added our ease in and ease out here, what that actually does is it adds what we call a Bezier here. I'm going to zoom up on this a little bit. You'll see the dot that is like the beginning keyframe right there. But then you see kind of this little heavier dot right there, I guess you could say. What that is the end of your Bezier curve. You grab this and watch what happens. See, it creates a line, and this will actually drag out a path. And now we can actually kind of generate a path here if we want more of a curve shape. You can do that down here. You can see that Bezier dot right there. So now what it's going to do is it's going to kind of do this weird shape right there, land there, and then move over. But that's what those little items are right there, are just these little Bezier tools to change the shape of the path. Now it's going to kind of do this weird motion, almost like a bounce here, and then come down to here. If we move back a little bit. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to get it to the beginning of the clip. We'll play, and now look at the kind of that weird little bounce that it does, and then it does kind of another little bounce over there. So it follows this path here and this path. And so it's no longer a straight line. It's got these kind of weird curves on it. Now undo that, undo, and we're back to normal. Now it's just a straight. Now it's just a linear line here. Just go straight instead of adding a curve to it. Now this will hold the same for effects that you add. These are the native effects right here. We can animate a rotation. We can animate a scale, we can animate position, we can animate all these things in here. We can even animate an opacity. To show an example here, if I simply click right here and turn on my opacity and just move it down a little bit and click and add another keyframe, and we'll turn this one to 0. Look at this. This is basically a fade out. It goes from, let me arrow over, from 100 to 0 opacity. So this basically now just fades out like that. Right now I'm going to reset all these effects. I'm going to hit reset on my motion. So right now I'm just going to return this back to normal. I'm going to right click on this clip, and I'm going to go up to remove attributes. I'm going to tell it to remove everything except for the Gaussian blur. I'm going to keep that on and hit OK. And it resets this back to normal. Let's show how to animate an added effect here. I've got this Gaussian blur that I've added. Let's have this shot start out of focus, and it's going to go in focus. So I'm going to click in my effect controls panel. I'm going to hit home, so it goes to the beginning of the clip. I'm going to click on my blurriness. This is very much the same as these animations up here. I'm going to click on this to turn on my keyframe, and it's added a keyframe. Actually, I'm going to move this over a little bit so it starts a little bit into the clip. Let's arrow over to land on it. And now I'm going to play through this a little bit. And I'm going to add another keyframe right there. So now I'm going to go arrow back. Right now this keyframe is already set at 0, and so is this one. But now that I've landed on this keyframe, I can go over and grab my blur and crank it up. I'm going to turn on my repeat edge pixels. And now as we play through this, let's go to the beginning, hit home and go to the beginning and play through this. It hits that keyframe and it gradually comes. Now it looks like somebody's out of focus and it comes into focus. Kind of a basic effect there. Let's show that again. Hit home, play through it, and it looks like it's out of focus and comes in focus. So a lot of this stuff you're just going to have to kind of play with and do some animation with and just have fun with it. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my Gaussian blur, and we're going to do some stacked effects here. I'm going to do like a quick little composite and kind of show a practical purpose for this here. I'm going to hit Shift minus and make this a little bit smaller. And what I'm going to do, hit slash just so you can see my entire timeline, plus to zoom up here. I'm going to grab this clip. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, drag it up and duplicate it and drag it over this clip. I'm going to grab a bunch of footage here. We're going to grab like 4 clips. I'm going to grab like 4 clips. I'm going to stack them on top of each other. I'm going to grab this one, Option, arrow up, move it over, hold down Option, grab this one, and move it over. We've got 4 clips there. Let's make these all the same length essentially. Now I'm going to zoom up to this. I'm going to make all these the same length here. I'm going to grab that one, drag it over, this one, drag it over. That little teeny little corner there represents the end of the clip there, so I got to move this one over to right there and pull it back this way to get a little extra. So all those clips are exactly the same length now. Now let's do a little animation composite effect here. This clip right here that you're seeing, that is the one on top. So we are seeing just that clip. If I grab the position and move that over like this or move it down, you'll see the clip behind it, which is this second one down right here, that second stacked clip. If I grab that one and move it down, you'll see the next clip behind that. And if I grab the next one and bring it down, you'll see the other one. So you can kind of see this hierarchy. Here is the first clip right here. That's the second clip behind it. That's the third, and that's the fourth. That's the one that's basically on the bottom of all these clips here. But if you move them, you're going to see the clips behind them. So I'm going to undo, and get back to normal. And let's do this. I'm going to make these all kind of fly onto the screen. Actually, first of all, let's start with this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have this kind of zoom down to this corner. Then I'll have the other ones kind of fly onto the screen here. So I'm going to go to the beginning of this clip here. I've got it selected. Actually, for right now, I can turn these ones off just so I'm looking at this one when I'm starting to move it. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to make it go from full screen and zoom over here. So I'm going to change my position and I'm going to change my scale. And actually I want that to start like about a second in, so we can move that over right there. And as it plays, it's going to hit these keyframes. And I'm going to make this about a 20 frame animation. So I'm going to hold down my shift and hit arrow right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is about 20 frames there. I'm going to add new keyframes there, and I'm going to change my scale on that keyframe. Take it to 40, and now I'm going to move it up to this corner, moving my position and moving it up to that corner right there. Let's make it a little bit larger. I'm going to actually change my anchor point to 0 and 0, so it scales out from the top of this corner right here. Now I'm going to change my position right there, right there. So my anchor point is up in this top left-hand corner now. So when I scale, it will scale out from there. Let's make this 45% so it doesn't quite take, so it takes up a little less than a quarter of the screen there. And I'm also going to have to animate my anchor point as well because it moves up in this corner. So I'm going to go back to my original anchor point here, which was 960 and 540. If you don't understand anchor point, you'll have to watch my previous episode. So now as I play through this, it animates up into this corner. And let's go to our position, and I'm going to right click on this and tell it to ease in, and go to this one and tell it to ease out. Let's see how that looks. And it does a little move up to that corner there. So now right after it finishes moving up to that corner, I'm going to want these other ones to fly in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrow first of all over to the right and land on this keyframe here. I like the kind of the scale size. So what I can do here is I can select, so I'm going to look at my scale here. It's at 45%. I'm going to click on my next clip. Let's turn this one on. It's full frame, but I'm going to make this whole thing already at 45%. So it's the same size. I'm going to go back to this previous clip and let's look at, I like this vertical position where it's at right here. It's at 50 on my vertical position. I can copy that if I want to, or I can just type it, and I'm going to hit Control C to copy, go to the next clip, click here, and do Control V to paste. Hit Enter, and with my anchor point also at 0, it's going to move it up to this point right there. So it's exactly at the same height as this clip here. I can click on the next clip, and on this one, I am also going to change my anchor point to 0, 0. I'm going to turn this clip on, so it's down there. I'm going to turn my scale to 45, and I want this on the same horizontal position, which is actually lined right up. It's already at 960, so it's already lined up. But I'm going to move this down on the vertical scale a little bit. I'm getting to these where they're just going to kind of end up. I'm going to turn on the next one, the bottom one, and I'm going to make this one 45% as well. Turn my anchor point to 0, 0. You don't have to do this with the anchor point the whole time. I like just to keep everything kind of mathematically exactly the same. But I'm going to click on this previous clip. This one is at 565 on the vertical alignment here. So I'm going to click this one. So I'm going to click on this one and say this one needs to be at 565. So now it is lined up perfectly with that. And also I want to get it now lined up perfectly with this one up here on the horizontal line. So I'm going to click here, select that clip. Let's arrow back and look at where that's, and we're on that keyframe right there where it's animated to. This is at 49. So I can click on this one, go to 49, and it moved it over. So now now everything's like this perfect square. Everything's all lined up here. So let's click on this first clip and let's watch this animation. When this one ends right here, I'm going to want these other ones to fly on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my arrows here and land on the second keyframe exactly right there. Once again, I'm going to turn off these ones so they don't distract me. I'm going to select this next one. I'm going to have this one come in from the side, and I'm going to click on the position keyframe. I'm going to play for a second. Right there is how long it, and then let's say I want this animation to be 20 frames. So I'm going to hold down Shift or right 4 times. And that's 20 frames right there. Click. That's added the new keyframe. And I'm going to go to the previous keyframe, the first keyframe, and tell it to move off screen. And tell it to move off screen horizontally. I'm going to grab my horizontal axis here. I'm going to drag it to the right and move it off the screen. Right there. So now as we play this, it moves in and stops. But I'm going to right click on this and say ease into that keyframe, so it gradually comes to a stop, and it kind of comes to a soft stop. Now when this one finishes, I want the next one to move in. So I'm going to arrow back, land on this previous keyframe, click on this clip here, click on my eyeball to turn it on, I'm going to change this one's position. Going to click a beginning keyframe and shift 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, new keyframe, and I'm going to have this like pop up maybe from the bottom here. So now I'm going to change its vertical position and go down. Right there, I will right click on this clip, say temporal interpolation, and ease into that. So as we go back, that one moves in. Oops, I reversed those. So I got to reverse these keyframes here. So this one is 565 and the second one is 1093. So I'm going to make this one here 565 and this one 1093. Sorry, I messed those up. 1093, and now it's out. So now it plays in there. And I've got this easing in to right there. When this one ends, I want the next one to come in, the fourth one. So I'm going to arrow back, land on that keyframe, go to the next clip, select this one, turn it on because I've got it turned off right now. Add a keyframe there, and shift, arrow to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 frames forward. Out a new keyframe, and then I'm going to arrow back to the first keyframe and move it off the screen. I'm going to grab my horizontal one and move it over to the left there so it moves in. Right click on this one, tell it to ease in. And there we go. Okay, so let's look at that full effect here as we get to the very beginning here. It starts out with a full screen image. As we play through it, that one moves up to this corner, that moves in, that moves in, and that moves in, and we've got this nice little animation with kind of this picture-in-picture going. So those are the basics of animation. You can kind of play with these things and do different and experiment with it and get different effects, but those are simply the basics of animation inside of Premiere Pro.